Hello everyone and welcome back to another session of Elden Ring PvP and another weapon showcase. Today we are taking a look at the Scepter of the All-Knowing. This is a weapon that you get when you finally have the opportunity to kill Sir Gideon Ofnir. This weapon is probably my favorite hammer class weapon in the game. I like it a lot, there's a lot of good reasons for that, but let's go ahead and get started with the basics. The weapon itself is a somber weapon, so that means you'll be stuck with its default skill, Knowledge Above All. With Knowledge Above All, that is actually a debuff that applies to both yourself and your opponent, and that will cause you to both deal and receive 10% more magic and 10% more holy damage. So, it's not a bad skill, but be mindful if you are going to be using it when fighting a caster, because it can definitely cause you some problems. That said, moving on to the rest of the basics, it requires 12 strength, 18 dexterity, and 21 intelligence in order to wield, and it weighs 4.5 units. At plus 10, the physical base damage of the weapon is 242, its magic base damage is 156, it has a D scaling in strength, and a C scaling in both intelligence and dexterity. Now, I've seen some complaints about the weapon. When you fight Gideon, he uses this weapon to cast spells during the fight, and I've seen people who are saying that it's upsetting that we can't cast spells with it, and I do agree. It would be nice if there were a tool in the game that you could fight with and cast spells with. It would make sense to have something like that. It's something that's sorely missed. But I also do think that it makes sense that we can't use this weapon to do that. And the reason why is because Sir Gideon Ofnir, the All-Knowing, knows how to cast with this weapon. That makes sense because he is all-knowing. And unfortunately, we are not. So we have to do the next best thing, and that would be to just smack people with it. And the weapon does a very good job at that. The weapon has a semi-unique moveset that is shared with the Morningstar. So, that said, its running R2 attack, its crouching and rolling R1s, and its backstep R1 are all shared with the Morningstar, and they are all thrusting attacks. On top of that, it's a longer reaching weapon than the Morningstar. It's actually the longest reaching hammer in the game. So because of those reasons right there, this weapon is phenomenal. The physical aspect of the weapon works with the Spear Talisman on those thrusting attacks as well. So because of that, you can deal some pretty impressive damage. In the focused PvP video I did with this weapon, I landed a two-handed running R2, and it did over 800 damage on a counter, which is pretty darn good all things considered. That said, the weapon's moveset overall is just extremely good. Because its rolling R1 and its crouching R1 are a thrust, that means you can crouch poke just like you would if you were using a greatsword. That's really good. We all know how dangerous crouch poking can be with a thrust, and this weapon has the ability to roll catch like crazy because of it. That said, there are a couple of cons to the weapon, so let's get started with them. It would of course be better if the weapon could cast spells. We all probably agree on that. It would be better if it wasn't split damage, if it was pure physical, or even if it was pure magic damage. That would also be pretty cool. The weapon would be better if it could be buffed. That said, it also would be better if it could have a status effect. That said, aside from the first thing I mentioned about the weapon being able to cast, I actually just described the Morningstar. But if we were talking about the Morningstar, we'd be complaining about it being short. And that's the big benefit to this weapon. It has a great reach. Of course, the biggest pro is the fact that it has so many attacks that are viable between the running attack, the rolling attack, the crouching attack, the backstep R1. Those thrust attacks are phenomenal. But if it didn't have the reach that it does, it would be much harder to actually land those hits. Yes, you run in on a number of them, the backstep R1 and the running attacks, of course. But because of its just innate long reach, it's a good weapon that shines with its thrusting moveset. Both of those things come into play. If you had one without the other, the weapon would not be as good as it is. So, realistically, you need both. And that's why the Morningstar isn't as good of a weapon. This one, I like a lot. There's so much good going on with it. With its moveset, it's so much fun to use. And people don't expect it. You don't see this weapon used very often. And I think that will probably change once people realize that it is actually a very good weapon. It is reliable. You can do some great damage with it, and you can be very punishing because of its ability to roll catch like crazy. So, overall, I like it. It's fun. If you have a build that can use it, I say give it a shot. It's basically got similar requirements to the Wing of Estelle, and we've seen a lot of that in PvP, so if you have used a build with the Wing of Estelle, maybe switch over to this as a backup. Try it as an alternative. You might like what you find. I think it's a very fun weapon to use, and I'd recommend to a friend. So, it is what it is. That said, I think that the biggest issue with the weapon, because yes, I listed off some things that would be nice if they could be changed. I think that the biggest issue with it is probably the fact that it is split damage. That's really my only real gripe. The other things, yeah, they'd be nice to have. There are some what ifs that you could consider for what would make it a better weapon, but at the end of the day, it's good. It really is. And then on top of that too, you could always use a flask to boost your magic damage and increase the split magic damage you're dealing, which I've done in a couple of fights, as you'll see. So, overall, a fun weapon. Thoroughly enjoyable, really great moveset. I'd recommend it if you haven't tried it out, but that's really about all I've got to say. I've rambled on long enough. If you guys have liked this video, found it helpful in any way, then give it a like, leave a comment, let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions on weapons I should use moving forward, again, let me know what you think. And that's all I've got, so do all the YouTube things, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see you all next time.